What we're talking about is I have a folder.
All right, I'm attempting it again.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a folder that requires a password, and I only put the password in a newsletter I put out roughly every 2 weeks. That is a protected place where I can put written content, PDF, content, articles, and things like that, that I can't just post to the web because of copyright issues.
Oh,
So
okay.
to get to that folder, you have to subscribe to my newsletter, and you would do that by going to drmsh.com. It's on the right-hand side, something about the newsletter. Just click on that, and it takes you through the process.
Okay.
It comes to you by email. So after we're done here, I will put that article in that folder.
All right. You heard it here. I'm here with Dr. Heiser. I have traveled on my birthday. I'm in Bellingham, Washington. You look on your map, I'm like all the way over here.
Right. Where we live on the Canadian border, so
I saw Canada.
yeah. If he goes close enough, I can push him into the ditch, and then the border patrol can apprehend him.
That's how Canadians are made.
Oh my God.
And they get pushed over the border.
Yeah.
Also, if any of you have any follow-up questions or anything like that, while we have him on the line, he's a PhD. He is the man, and so ask the questions if you have any questions.
Go ahead and ask the music question, and we're gonna check in with Calvin here.
Okay. All right. Is it the choice of God for the New Testament believer to have only a cappella music?
The choice of God.
What you laughing at, man?
I'm sorry. I'll explain why.
Well, yeah, I would say no. I mean, it's very clear in the Old Testament they were using instruments. And the reason why the early church doesn't really do that is because of the transition from the temple, where you had instruments everywhere,
Right.
to the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
There was this thing in the Bible called the exile, when the temple was destroyed, and the Jewish population is deported to Babylon. Well, when they come back, they don't have the temple anymore, so they're not going to. Let's put it this way: every synagogue doesn't have room for the choir. Okay, that was used in the temple. So it's a very normal, understandable thing why the kind of stuff that was done in the temple is not reproducible in synagogues dotting the countryside and really the known world at the time. So the bar is pretty high for musical performance anyway, musical instruments. It's not like you go down to your local store, your Walmart, and buy one. There's not a proliferation of instruments, just practically speaking, or people who know what to do with them. So it's kind of by default, it's just not going to be the same because you don't have a temple. So Christians inherit largely they inherit sort of the worship format, or the worship, format's a decent word, but I was going to say the rationale, or kind of what you do in. So kind of what you do structurally, kind of what you do in a service. Why? Why would the early church inherit that from the Jews? Because, drum roll please, Christianity came from Judaism. Okay? The disciples were Jews. Jesus was, mind-blowing, isn't it? So again, these are normative transitions. The early church fathers, some patristic fathers, were very hostile across the board toward musical instruments, but that only really begins after the 2nd century. And the article I was talking to Robert about that discusses this specifically points out that if you actually go look at primary sources, again, what a thought. My cat's in here again. I don't know how he got in.
Right.
But if you actually go to the primary sources, the church fathers, and I know some denominations look at the church fathers and say, look at how much they hated instruments, so we're not going to do that. It's proof the early church, banned the use of instruments.
Uh-huh.
Well, again, you're missing 200 years for one thing. So what happened in the first 200? We don't have any evidence for banning instruments there. But when you do, if you actually go look at the sources, the early church fathers' writings, all of their condemnation of instruments occurs outside the church, outside the liturgy, outside the church service. There isn't a single example of an early church father condemning the use of instruments in liturgy or in the worship service. So it has to do with something cultural, what's going on, what's associated with musical instruments outside the believing community that they don't, they don't want Christians to do. And if you read the article, it's like weddings and banquets and this or that celebration. Instruments were thought to be very worldly, but you don't really, again, that context isn't what's happening inside the church. So it's kind of a I don't want to, deceptive is too strong of a word, but it's a bit of a misleading argument.
Well, the scripture, and again, angel advocate, the scriptures say, sing, in several scriptures, in a couple of scriptures in Colossians and in the book of Ephesians, it talks about singing. It doesn't say anything about playing or anything like that. And so what would you say to people?
And we know that it's not possible to play an instrument while you're singing. That's correct.
Well, the silence of the scriptures exclude.
The scriptures don't mention electricity, indoor plumbing. Okay, wireless. How about wireless? There's no recorded instance of anybody performing a funeral. Like the apostolic leadership, they didn't perform funerals, so I guess we shouldn't do that.
Right.
Performing marriages in church, I guess we shouldn't do that. Arguments from silence are always poor arguments because you can always fill in the silence with something else. That again, this is easy. This takes 30 seconds to throw in other things in the silence there that every church is going to do and thinks is normative.
Right.
So
well,
what good is the argument do?
Well, being an angel advocate, they will say that electricity is an aid to help you sing so you can see the songbook.
Right.
Music is an addition. I'm telling you. True.
Maury's howling for that.
Oh my gosh.
Even thought that one was bad. See, now you should have the camera.
Maury, do it again.
Do it again, Maury. Even
again.
Maury thought that was a bad argument.
You're talking about the dog.
Maury is my pug. Okay. Maury's getting a little too much screen time. Yeah, these are word games. They're done for convenience because again, I could pick out a practice in a church, the church that claims that, and put things in buckets. I can call things, well, it's an aid and not a, what was the other term?
An addition.
An addition. Well, to me, it looks like an addition because my church doesn't do that. It's so easy to play the same word games with something that particular church would favor, that it shows the weakness of the argument. It's subjective. It's just playing with vocabulary and playing with categories.
And can we argue something anyway that the author did not even have in his mind? If can we in that passage in Ephesians or in Colossians, he's not trying to correct.
Right. Let me just say one thing. By the way, electricity would be an addition because there was a time when we didn't have electricity and when we did.
Right.
Every building there's a time when it does have electricity and a time when it didn't.
Right.
So again, it's kind of silly.
All right. So the stream was down while our guest here gave his introduction. So can you quickly state your name because people are asking like, who is this? This isn't Maury.
I am Robert Morris from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Robert Morris.
Morris, M-O-R-R-I-S.
Morris, M-O-R-R-I-S.
Morris.
That's the future.
Maurice.
That's actually how he and Dad met. It's through Maury. Maurice does all our networking.
Atticus is in here now.
Maury hires all of our
They
employees,
love
including
dogs. They
Dad.
have
Dad
dogs.
was hired by Maury.
Can you see Atticus in the
dog
Yeah, you
likes
can.
me,
I'm also going to quickly boost the volume because a couple people are asking for that.
I am here
let's
with a real
move
Bible
closer.
scholar.
All right, so is our stream going here?
Yeah,
It's
we haven't
on?
dropped a single frame.
Oh, good.
which is
okay.
good.
All right.
All right, yeah, there's the reference to the boost for audio. Okay, we got that.
So let me quickly adjust the mic because it's kind of covering him now.
All right. Oh, it's covering Atticus?
No, it's covering our guest.
Okay. All right.
All right. Did you feel satisfied with everything you said on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question I'm going to ask you: how would a biblical picture of community look like? And do you see any good examples of that
Well,
in
I
today?
think it looks like what happens in the book of Acts, in the epistles. So that to me is a transparently easy answer. You can go look at the examples. Do we see that today? Dimly. I mean, some churches are better at that sort of thing than others. I don't know that I've ever seen or been, or maybe even, I don't even know that there could be a church that does everything, as well as, the situation in Acts, but, maybe they do, especially like if they're under persecution and whatnot, because that sort of boils it down to the basics, and they take care of each other. So, in a nutshell, I think it's a place you go for sound teaching. The community takes care of each other. deals with its own problems, that sort of thing.
Okay. Our next question I will ask you, what's the difference between behavioral salvation and salvation through believing loyalty?
Well,
I have a lot of friends
right.
that suffer with this.
The first category, behavior, will be anything that adds the concept of merit to grace. In other words, if you believe that your behavior contributes to salvation, then that's another way of saying that the work of what Christ did on the cross is not sufficient. In other words, there's something you have to do to close this gap or to complete the work of Christ, which, to be honest with you, this sounds harsh. I don't want to be harsh, but that's blasphemous.
Wow.
Okay, you're not going to contribute anything to what Jesus has done. But I realize, again, I did a whole podcast episode on this, and I think it's fair to say we've done several podcast episodes on this. In the book of Hebrews, it's in the 200s, right around there on my podcast, but we spent a whole episode on this. So the gospel has nothing to do with human merit. God is never in your debt. Okay, so if you believe that you have to do something to put the gospel over the hump, you got to help it out. You got to help your chances or whatever. You don't understand it. The gospel is about what Christ did for you on your behalf, and God asks only that you believe it. So any other way detracts from the sufficiency of what Jesus did and puts it in your bank account, essentially. Jesus does not need your help. God does not need your help. The plan that God came up with had no deficiencies, and it doesn't need you to put it over the hump and make it successful.
Wow. And that leads into my final question, because we've been doing a study on Nicodemus, just talking about that whole conversation that Jesus had with Nicodemus and all of the events that leading up to this. And the question that I have for you right now is, what did Jesus mean when he said, you must be born of the water and spirit?
Yeah, well, again, you might want to hold on to your hats here. My answer is going to be really shocking and profound. Jesus probably had the Old Testament in his head.
Wow.
He probably got his theology from the Old Testament, the information, the revelation that God gave. His community, the same community that was thinking about a Messiah, the same community that birthed the Messiah through, again, Abraham's lineage and David and whatnot. Chances are Jesus got his information from God's inspired word in the Old Testament.
Well, can you?
But I mean, if you just chase the language down, where does water and spirit occur in tandem in the Old Testament? I mean, you're going to find it in Ezekiel 32,
yeah.
Ezekiel 34, Ezekiel 36, and it refers to the new covenant. And the new covenant is about the Spirit of God giving you a new heart. And so that's essentially what Jesus is saying. To be born of the water and the Spirit is to be regenerated. It's to get a new heart, and we do that through embracing the work of the Messiah. Following Jesus in Nicodemus's case, because Jesus hadn't died yet. But if you put your faith, if you align your faith, you put your salvation, you park it right there on who this person is, what he's claiming to be the Messiah. You believe in him. Okay, then Jesus talked plenty about the Spirit of God would come after he had died and risen again. He would give you a new heart. He would indwell you. That's what he's getting at. It's just that the conversation happens prior to what happens with the cross, and then of course the coming of the Spirit at Pentecost.
So you're saying that he's not talking about hydrogen oxide?
No, he's not talking about getting wet.
He's not talking about getting wet.
He's talking about a new heart.
So this, this is where
again I'm basing that on the Old Testament.
Right.
See, my audacious assumption is that Jesus' teaching aligns with the Old Testament, which
right.
To me that's not a leap.
Right.
3/4 of your Bible is the Old Testament. Chances are, what Jesus is going to say is going to be consistent with it, and because it speaks of him in advance.
You mean Jesus didn't read the New Testament?
No, it was checked out at the library.
Dude, he could have known.
It was checked out, so somebody just didn't bring it back.
Spoiler alert.
But Dr. Heiser, how do you explain baptism regeneration from this? How
baptism doesn't regenerate you.
Now you're gonna have to explain that to my audience.
Well, why does baptism? baptism doesn't take away sin. It's the blood
Wash
of
away. The
Christ.
Bible says, "Wash away all sins."
Right. Yeah, that's what the blood of Christ does.
You get it with when you get in the water. There's something that happens in that water.
Just like what happened at the cross, right? You know, and Jesus didn't turn to the thief on the cross and say, after you get baptized, or maybe they'll dip you when they take your body down here, then you'll be with me in paradise.
But the angel advocate says that was before he died. See, now the New Testament came in effect.
Right. So there are two gospels then. Right. So I can do one and one. It's two. I'm tracking with you here.
You just got 1v1.
So
I want to take a look at some of our.
all right, go
board
ahead.
here. Okay, let's see. Watching from Scotland.
Wow.
So Scott Harper, what? Just if you can jump in here and tell us what part of Scotland you're in.
Shout out to Scotland for being.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've been in Scotland once. We went to Edinburgh, an international conference there.
He's doing his
And I-
podcast show too.
Okay, my secret here about that Edinburgh event was I skipped a day of the conference, believe it or not, to go to Loch Ness.
Mm.
Hey, Dad.
I did do that. Yeah,
Was it fun?
It was fun.
Also,
I didn't see anything. But
Also,
it was fun.
I don't want to flex on our viewers or anything, but let me just say the effect I'm doing with the chat right now is incredible, and I just want to call attention to it.
Okay, you have Armin in the chat.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, he's.
Is that a still or is okay?
No,
he's
it's
moving.
live.
Well, he's not moving on my screen.
Well, yeah, it's because there's a delay, Dad. It's a stream.
Okay. Sorry about that.
How am I
Okay,
going to
Dan-
type
Dan
in my
says-
password on your computer?
Dan says really enjoying the Ron Johnson posts. Okay, Leviticus series. Yeah, and I'm a little late in chiming in on Ron's posts. I'm going to say a few things about it. It's not going to be long, maybe a couple paragraphs, but I'm glad to hear that. Excuse me, glad to hear that. Did the fall take place before essentially, did Genesis 3 take place before Genesis 6? Yes. That's the chronology of events there. Something about being 15. Let's see here. Is this for real? Welcome from Barcelona. Is that like a deliberate wordplay on Barcelona? What's going on there? Is Barcelona spelled correctly there? Okay, I just saw something about speaking up here. Oh, I lost it.
We have a follow-up. Veronica Neal, good friend of mine, says, hey, baptism is symbolic of the heart change.
Yeah, if you submit to baptism, it should indicate a change of heart. Or as I talk about an unseen realm and supernatural, it's a declaration of whose side you're on.
Amen.
So it's a loyalty kind of thing. It's a public affirmation of that.
Right.
Oh, let's see here. Dan says, I think the thing that hangs people up on merit is the original sin concept. Well, it might. For some, it might. I mean, there's lots. I think there's a number of reasons why people get hung up on merit, and one of them is guilt. That kind of thing. Not letting it rest. With what Jesus did.
Right.
I'm still trying to find this thing here. Somebody said something about listening up because of their pug, and I can't find it. Calvin, can you find that?
Where, Dad,
It
are you
was
doing the
kinda-
thing where you don't scroll down the chat?
No, I'm scrolling right now here.
Okay, well, where do you see it?
I'm not seeing it now. But I saw it before I touched something, and then the whole thing just moved. So let's see here.
Let's see. Let me
Can't
see if I can
type
find a
tonight.
pug-related question.
Yeah.
Let me just Control F pug. Wow, that actually worked way worse than I thought it would.
If you're receiving any value whatsoever, please like this video and share it. Like the video and share it. It doesn't cost you a dime to do that. As a matter of fact, you would be partnering up with us. And with me
Carla
to,
Atkins said, "Can you guys speak up? My pug is snoring." First off, I can't. Well, I mean,
Okay,
I guess
you-
they could
you-
speak up,
You need to put is Maury awake?
or you could just like.
Maury needs some FaceTime on the camera. My picture of Armin has not moved since we were talking.
That's because Armin's sleeping.
No, he's moving right now.
Dad, there's no, what do you
Okay,
call this
I'm
movement? He's
gonna
like in
watch.
rigor mortis. He's
No,
basically
he
dead.
just turned his head, and I'm watching it right now. I mean, is the delay 30 minutes? You know,
The delay's like 30 seconds.
he's not moving.
Look, he just moved on my screen.
He's
We're
not moving on
streaming
my screen.
on their podcast.
Well, he's moving on mine
as well
again.
as I'm doing
Oh,
my
there he
Facebook
moved.
Live on
Okay.
mine.
Yeah,
So
there
we go. Well,
this
that's
is keeping
like-
it in context.
How about this? I'll just pick up Maury and I'll put him on top of Armin.
That ought to
Well,
start a
I
fight.
don't think Armin's gonna really like that. So,
I don't think
Yeah.
he seems pretty
I-
okay with it.
boy, I just
He's
keep losing
surprisingly
this.
fine. Look, now we got all our favorite animals. There we go.
All right, yeah, get Maury in the picture there.
Maury's always in the picture. How about this? He'll just engulf the bottom, like, left of the screen at all times.
Okay.
Where's our... How about this? He'll just exist on, like, the top layer of the frame at all times. Is this what you wanted?
Oh, let's see.
Godzilla! Oh no. There
Oh,
he is.
Josh says, I look like a rabbi now that the beard is starting. Okay, well, I gotta tell you, it ain't getting any longer. Okay,
Sown the seeds
I'm
of
letting it grow a
non-destruction.
little bit so I can trim it, and it's gonna be even. But you know, my wife likes it, so we're gonna try it. And you know, I think if I keep after it, it'll be fine. Okay, so Jen comes in. Yep, I'm catching up here.
I just want to point out that the second I made Maury the only thing on screen, people in chat just erupted. Like, yes, this is it. I love it.
They're here. I'm telling you, Maury is the talent.
Right.
Also,
You gotta
someone
keep the
asks
talent.
a question to you, and it's a question that I should probably answer, but it's, what are your thoughts on the flat Earth?
No, I'm sure nobody has asked.
No,
that
no, no.
here.
Someone did. Someone
Because
did.
You're taking
Someone
advantage
did.
of my inability to keep up with this scrolling thing.
Someone did. Look.
you're-
I'll find it. Look,
you're
I
just
will
doing
screen
it to
cap
do the
it.
flat
I
Earth.
will screen cap it. I will put it up on screen
Yes,
just to
the
prove
Earth
it. And you
flat.
know what? I am going to address it.
All right, no, I see it.
Dan Shea also
Okay.
says, "What's Calvin's view of flat hair?" Funny story about the flat Earth. I actually did for the play I was in. We all got to do monologues, right?
Is it true
So
that
I found
Maury
a
is Amish?
yeah.
No, it's not true. Go ahead.
But I found I found a really funny flat Earth related rant on Facebook. So I adapted it into a play, a single person play that's like
Yes.
90 seconds long, and then I performed it for my section at Whatcom.
Yeah, it's
Our-
a community college.
Yeah,
goes
our
to.
community college thing. And let me tell you, it was incredible. There's like a beginning and an end, and the middle I always make up. And it's really great because for the final day, which you weren't there for, there's some guy who was on his phone in the front row. So for that outro bit where I'm like addressing the audience, I like snap my fingers. I'm like, I pause everything. Like, you look at me. What do you think of the flat Earth? And I just had him.
Did he just lock up? or-
Wow.
Sort of. And like I didn't go on until he like clapped. It was great.
All right, yeah. So they did this play 3 nights. I went to the middle night. You know, so you actually didn't have a script. You actually like ad-libbed 3 different
Yeah.
things.
The middle is always ad-libbed. I know what
Okay.
the beginning and end is, but the middle is always just a bunch of made up
But
stuff.
how do you know how long? Like, how are you timing it? Or are you just kind of winging it?
I go for about as long as I can go without the room feeling too awkward, and that's usually when I've hit the 90-second mark.
I didn't know you're an actor.
An actoire, yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Somebody's Pugzilla. I mean, yeah, everybody's talking about the Pug. Pugzilla, Pug Thug.
It's because I made Maury's green screen thing as large as possible and just put him on the top level of the broadcast.
All right. Well, I wanted to throw something out to my audience, but our other audience can chime in here.
All right.
You know, I have a nonprofit. It's called McLot. In 2019, and part of the reason Robert is here, we're talking about, hey, what are we going to do in 2019 other than do some print stuff and have that translated again? We've talked about it before, discipleship curriculum. Again, that's what we're calling it anyway. It'll be a short book. But that's going to be done by the end of 2018. So we're toying around with going to having a few McLeod events. These are not Unseen Realm events. This is not Mike shows up for 2 or 3 days and talks for 10 hours, okay? I'm not going to do those anymore, Lord willing. I mean, I have one of those scheduled yet for this year in Utah, in Salt Lake, in September, that I have not put on my website yet because we have to nail down a specific date and all that kind of stuff. But we'd like to start transitioning to talking about not just how my content enters into this question, but just the general question of, how do you want to say this? What in the world's wrong with the church?
What's wrong with
well, I mean, like, when I think of that, I think of, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, what the climate in the country is going to be like, for serious Christians, and I don't think it's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be thinking about how we do church without buildings and, build community and that kind of thing. So we're actually talking about going places to a couple hours. We talk about, hey, this is what kind of the future looks like. This is how we need to be thinking about church for our own good now, and again, so that it has longevity. And then, really having testimony time. Again, these trying to model some of the things that we think are missing from church. Having a prayer time, and then, and here's why I bring it up specifically, linking that to a service project. So like we do one thing, all that stuff one day, and then the next day we do something. So I'm curious, because when I do sort of announce this in the newsletter, on the blog, and eventually my podcast, we're going to be searching for ideas to help people think about what they might want us, the CLOT, the nonprofit, to do. And so I'm curious, I'm just going to throw it out here. Can you think of anything now that would be a good service project? And again, what I'm thinking here is, you might be in a Bible study, you don't even have a church, but there's somebody in your group that needs their house painted. Well, we can buy the paint to do that, show up, you get a group there, we have a little event, and we do that. That's our service project. It might be something, repairing this or that, or doing, some kind of, helping a church do a public event. We're talking about time, we're talking about resources, we might be able to finance something, but this is a very new idea in our heads, and so I'm wondering what you all might think about that. Does your church, does your group have something that that needs to be done, and it isn't getting done?
Right.
It isn't getting done either because your church doesn't have resources, or like nobody cares, but this is sort of an obvious thing to do. Right. This is something the church ought to be doing, but it's not doing. So we're going to be looking for ideas in the future as we head toward 2019, but I'm throwing it out now because Robert and I have been talking about this for the last couple days with Rich. Some of you know my friend Rich, how we can do some of this, but we're going to need a lot of input from you. We're going to need groups that, again, are willing to have us come in and do that. Again, it's not Mike lecturing for 10 hours. It's not an Unseen Realm event. It's got, I won't say it's got nothing to do with that. It's got a little bit to do with that because it's hard to not mix certain concepts of my content, like imaging, into that. That's a natural thing to include, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to talk about thinking better about church, and sort of doing things now and planning things for the future, and then doing a service project. Service project element, by the way, is something my wife thought of, and it's kind of about a week ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. So it makes sense to do something like that, to just try to help some group out there that follows what we're doing here, and help them do something, helping them accomplish something in their own church or in their own group that's neglected.
Yeah. And I like the fact that it simply enhances whatever it is that that they're doing to make them personally more responsible, or they see a problem, they want to fix that thing. Mm-hmm. I like that concept. I like that idea.
Percy says I can make a 3D Bible app. Like really?
Oh.
Wow. That's kind of interesting. Is it, Percy, let me know either in email or the stream, are you talking about this particular idea or just generally? because I may have lost some context here, but that just caught my eye. Let's see here. Yeah, widows is an obvious thing. Again, what is the thing? I mean, just noodle it. What is the thing that our house church or our church or our Bible study group, boy, we'd love to do this, fill in the blank.
Right.
But we really can't for some reason, or there's opposition, or whatever it is. And we're just looking for ideas. We're looking for ideas now, and eventually it'll be something that, hey, we're ready to do this, so we will field. I mean, application sounds a little dry and toasty, but I mean, we're only going to be able to do a certain number of these things. So, but we'll be asking for candidates, I guess, in some way. But we'll figure it out as we go. Let's see. There was a note here. Yes, it would be a weekend project. Like I'd come in Friday, do something Friday night. And Saturday we'd be doing that all day. So yeah, it's a weekend kind of thing. Okay, Percy says I made a virtual church through mobile devices. That's kind of interesting.
Percy also says that he's working on a VR experience of the Nephilim story.
Really?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I just in case they do have this idea,
Yeah, that's
please do not make a VR church, because it'll last for like 10 seconds before people get a hold of it and start messing with it.
All right.
So Ashby says help families pay utility bills, rent. I mean, everything's on the table here. It with something like that, it can't be like every month, but if we could just, if that's the service project, hey, we've got 3 people in our group here that need this, come on out and help them in this way. Sure, that's definitely that's definitely a possibility. We're just looking for ideas here. But again, we want the idea to come from your group, because we're going to leave after the weekend, and we can help you do a particular thing to kickstart it. To kind of put you over the hump. But since it's in your area and your group, if it's something that needs to be sustained, then you're going to need to sustain that. So we're looking for things to kickstart, things to do, and what we really want to do is stimulate the discussion in your group about kind of where the church is headed, and we meet a lot of people, both of us, who are just sort of discouraged with that, and so we want to start having discussions and doing something practical. Go ahead, Cal.
We have an idea from Carla Akins, I don't know. I know for a fact this is a joke. I don't care that it's a joke. We have to do it now. They said pug races to raise money for the hungry.
Oh
Dad, can we actually organize some pugs to go on some sort of race?
Does Maury look like...
I'll put my... I didn't say Maury. He can just, like, oversee it. It's like President Snow or whatever his name was from the Hunger Games. He's just watching over it. But what I am saying, for legal reasons, we can't have a pug Hunger Games, but we probably could have pug races. And all I'm saying is that I want that to happen.
Is that like
I will put money towards that.
What do they call that? The puppy Super Bowl thing? What do they, that thing?
The Puppy Bowl? I don't know.
Yeah, there's something like during the Super Bowl. It's just, it's kind of weird, but
pugs only. But Westy can bet. Westy
is
is allowed to bet as much money as she wants on the race.
Westies.
What is a Westie?
How do you get a pug to run in a straight line? I mean,
you get it to chase after something at once.
Well, I know, but Maury's eyesight isn't the best. I mean, let's be honest.
If
you were like 10 yards ahead of him, he's probably not.
Have you heard of the Miracle on Ice? They didn't have such a strong advantage either, but they persevered and they won, because that's what America is about. And I'm not saying Maury is like that team, but I am saying he could be.
Wow.
I think Maury. I think if you like put a little shock on his butt, that would get him to go in the straight line a little bit faster.
I find electric shocks tend to motivate many things to move faster.
Yes, we're not going to do that to Maury, because
it's not Maury's specific ability. Okay. Maury channels the power of lightning. He'd absorb it.
The running of the pug. Okay, now we're the running of the puppy bowl. That's what it's called.
There we go.
There you go. So
okay.
But really, you know, we are looking for ideas. You know, McLeod, again, it's not like we've got, you know, piles and piles of resources in terms of, you know, money and stuff like that. But what we do have, you know, we want to put to some good use. The Supernatural Translation project is going to be wrapped up, Lord willing, by the end of 2018. The discipleship book will be done, and then that'll get translated. So that'll spill into 2019. But again, we're just trying to look for things that we can do. And since, you know, this is the audience that, you know, contributes to McLeod, you know, we want to do things for your group, your Bible study group, your church, you know, your whatever little group it is you have, because that, you know, we'd like to show up someplace. We hope, you know, people will come. Then you get to meet other people who watch the show or listen to the podcast or, you know, whatever it is, read the books. They'll show up, you'll meet other people, but then we actually get to do something in your area that, again, matters. You know, that put some pet project or fill some neglected need or whatever, something that just needs to be done and isn't getting done.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I think if we really are trying to help influence our communities, you know, and just people who's in need of feeling useful. I think you know, in my experience in ministry, many people they don't feel useful. Their spiritual gifts are not detected. They're not developed. They're not enhanced, and they don't necessarily get an opportunity to use them. And so when you see a problem that needs to be fixed, to know that you are that person that has a team that you can gather together to help fix that thing that you saw that is a problem, I think that's an awesome idea.
Right, and it's like, boy, we would do this if we just had $500 or $1,000.
Yeah.
No, that's what we're trying to target.
Right.
You know, we can get that thing or pay for that thing that your group wants to do, and yeah, you can you know, save your money or whatever and wait for a few months, but it might be something that's just, this is ideal. This is a, you know, like we like to use around the building, this is low hanging fruit. You know, we can take care of this. So we're just looking for ideas. Somebody said here, Japan could benefit with a translation of Unseen Realm. We actually don't have a Japanese translation of Supernatural yet. The person, I don't think, boy, it's been a while since I even looked. Do I even remember how many translations are? I don't know. We might, Japan, I'm gonna actually look at that. Oh, I can't because I don't know my flash drive here, but Japanese might be going for that, but Unseen Realm, I do not have the translation rights to that. So if anybody out there wants translations in any language of Unseen Realm, you have to contact the publisher, Lexham. I have no authority, no ability to do that. So Supernatural's a different story. Yeah, Divine Council stuff bolsters the Mormon doctrine, they think. I'm glad you added that, because you don't have to look very far into Mormon doctrine and what I'm saying to know that they're quite different. It also might help to have your Mormon friends actually Google me, put in Heiser, Elohim, seen them all, and it's my published critique of Mormonism's use of Psalm 82 in a Mormon journal. It's in a Mormon publication. It's kind of a long story how that happened, but they asked me to do it.
Aren't there
So
like?
I did it.
I'm not.
It was a good exchange.
This could be completely false. I actually, you know, it probably is false. But I've actually wanted to ask you about it. I've just never really brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't there some like really strange like things that were cut from like old versions of the Mormon Bible?
You mean that they don't believe anymore?
That they've omitted. Because I've heard of some strange.
Well, I have to ask it again. Is it things? Are you asking about things they used to teach but don't teach anymore?
Yeah.
Okay. For a while, are you familiar with Mormonism at all? Because for a while they wouldn't accept. I don't know if it was just African Americans, or if it was, or if it was other minority groups like as pastors.
I think it was specifically
church
African
officers.
Americans
Yeah.
that the Mormons used to.
Probably because it's the American West and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And, It's the 1800s. You know.
Right. Yeah.
So
We're all just a bunch of
that's
jerks.
well, that's one example. You know, where they changed their doctrinal outlook.
Right. Well, they fixed that part that yeah, y'all can go, but I don't think. I think there's still some stuff there. I don't know.
Yeah,
'Cause I know they got like tier.
I'm
Is it
not
like a
familiar
tiered
enough.
system or something?
Yeah, I mean they don't have like seminaries and like really like trained pastors. That if you're in a Mormon church, I know that the sort of the established male figures in a particular congregation, like teaching rotates
Yeah.
for them. So it's kind of lay led. But at one point, you couldn't do that if you were African American or something.
But
So I
also
don't know
with
what
salvation or something like that.
Oh,
It's
no,
just
there are other doctrinal issues for sure.
oh yeah.
It's ultimately it's another works-based system
Uh-huh.
that gets intermixed with talk about the cross and whatnot. But as far as like we used to teach this, now we don't teach it anymore. That to me, that's the one that occurs, pops into my head right away. But I don't know Mormonism well enough
Yeah,
to think of another
me neither.
example.
They do the little cup things, right?
I'm not sure.
They do this
Sure.
like tower cup
Hey,
thing.
Pete says, my wife is full-blown LDS, and she has mentioned many times as I listen to Unseen Realm and Supernatural. Right, well, Pete, let me give you a good example, a really, really clear example of how what I'm saying contradicts Mormon doctrine. And therefore, I would say Mormon doctrine contradicts Scripture. The divine council is Yahweh, the God of the Bible, the God of Israel, and the heavenly host. All of them are Elohim, but Yahweh, Yahweh is distinct. So I like to say Yahweh is an Elohim, but no other Elohim is Yahweh. A Mormon would not say that. A Mormon makes all Elohim equivalent. This is why they have Lucifer and Jesus as brothers. Okay? That's nonsense. Why? Because Jesus is Yahweh incarnate. And Yahweh is ontologically unique. How do we know Yahweh is ontologically unique? Well, according to the Bible, he is the only one that wasn't created. All the other ones are. He is therefore pre-existent. He is sovereign. He's the only one that's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. In other words, this lone one is the only one that gets described in those ways. So this is why I titled my article in the Mormon Journal, "You've seen one Elohim, you've seen them all?" No. So that is a fundamental break, a fundamental difference between the biblical view of the heavenly host, the divine council, and what Mormons say. It ain't all the same. So your wife just needs to think a little more carefully about that, and maybe read the book, or be thinking about what's in the book and why I say what I say in the book. But I would actually recommend going out to the internet and getting my article. Again, it's published in a Mormon journal. The short version of the story is, I have a friend who teaches at BYU. We met online, and he frequents the Evangelical Theological Society annual meeting. And you say, why would a Mormon go to the Evangelical Theological Society meeting? And I asked him that, and this is a quote. Because nobody in Mormonism does biblical studies. We need you guys.
Wow.
So those who are interested in biblical studies, they would go to the annual meeting, because that's where they sort of stock up. If you have certain Mormon scholars who were interested in biblical studies, biblical scholarship, they're not getting it within the Mormon church. They're coming to our meeting. And so I told this guy, I said, well, it's funny that we should sort of link up now, because I'm going to be reading this paper at the next meeting in November, critiquing Mormonism's use of Psalm 82. And this guy had written, a very long article in a Feshrift, which is a book honoring a particular person, on Psalm 82. So he's like, man, I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure I get to that one. And he came. His name's Dan Peterson specifically. He's a Middle Eastern scholar, Middle Eastern studies scholar. He came for the whole paper, and he afterwards he said, boy, I really enjoyed that. It really made me think about some things. Can we publish that? And I said, sure, you can publish that if you make if the journal makes clear that I'm not a Mormon, he goes, that's no problem. I said, now, he said, well, we're going to have somebody in our camp, who was in a PhD program in Near Eastern Studies at the time. And this guy has since finished. I've met him on several occasions. We're going to have him respond to you. And I said, that's fine. Can I respond to him? In other words, do I get the last word? And he said, that's no problem. So if you actually go look at the journal, you'll see my article, the other guy's article. His name is David Bakovi, and then my response to David. And the short version is, David and I kind of talked past each other for a lot, because my article was about Psalm 82. His article was sort of about some key Mormon ideas, especially that Yahweh was once a man, and he's talking about Adam and stuff like this. And that's related in some way to divine council stuff. And David knows about divine council stuff because his dissertation was on Amos, and there's a divine council passage in Amos. And he did a journal article on it that's really good, actually. And then my rejoinder to David is about, well, if Mormons and evangelicals want to talk about this kind of stuff, heavenly host, divine council, Elohim, here are sort of the areas that need discussion, that need attention. So it was a good exchange. I would have your wife read that. Again, if she knows her doctrine, now you say she's LDS through and through. Well, I know lots of Christians that are evangelical through and through, and they don't know much about the Bible.
Right.
So don't assume that your wife really knows Mormon doctrine deeply, like some of these guys that I'm interacting with on the journal, Dan or David. But it still might be very useful for her to read that. If she does know it deeply, she should be able to detect the differences pretty quickly.
Right.
So, Resurrection Jose said, this sounds like the same person you mentioned in the sermon video, What's the True Meaning of the Gospel? It's kind of interesting. That wasn't the title of my sermon. My title of the sermon was While We Were Yet Sinners. But that is what the sermon was about. And
right.
Yes, it's the same guy. It's the same guy.
Did he ever get back in touch with you?
I've seen him at a couple meetings, because he asked me when we sat down for lunch. The first question he asked is, "I'm a Mormon. You're an evangelical. Am I going to hell?" And so, it was a good opportunity. I told him I'm going to answer the question like I'd answer it to anybody.
Right.
I don't care if you're Catholic, if you're atheist. I can do that because the answer is the same in every scenario.
Right. And
that is, trusting on the work of Christ exclusively. So essentially what I said to him was, if you could look me in the eye and say, I'm trusting in the work of Christ on the cross for my salvation and nothing else, and no merit of my own, then you understand the gospel, and I'm going to accept that you believe it. You're in, okay? Because that's the gospel.
Right. I
said, I might think a lot of your doctrine is just nutty, and you're going to look at me and think my doctrine's nutty. But if we both understand the gospel, if we both accept it, and there's no issue of merit, we're not adding anything to it, then that's what God wants you to believe. That's the faith that God wants you to have, and you have the right object of faith. So he looked at me and he said I'd have to think about it a little bit but he said, I think I can say that, But it was a thoughtful response, and I've since run into him a couple times at the conferences, not in recent years. He tends to go to Arabic stuff and Middle Eastern stuff at SBL, but as far as I know, he still attends. So you got to realize it's a huge event. SBL and AAR, you're talking about 15,000 scholars. Okay?
You have to be a scholar
This
to
is
go?
not. No, you don't have to have a PhD to go. I mean, most people do because it's anybody and everybody in biblical studies, and then when you throw AAR in there, it's religion, any religion. You got your Wiccans, you got your pagans, you got it's just everything under the sun. But it's a huge event.
Wow.
It's not like there's 100 people and everybody in the room. It's just not like that. Oh, let's see here. Okay, Calvin, what are you up to?
I'm filming Maury
And the cat.
and the cat.
Okay, Calvin, let's talk about your play a little bit.
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
Do you like? And parts of it were real funny. The parts of it were like, what? Like kind of strange, but parts of it were pretty funny.
I mean, like none of the scenes are supposed to connect in any way. It's a
Right.
bunch of different skits and sketches mainly.
Right. It was just sort of I don't even know if
A grab
montage
bag.
is the right word. Yeah, grab bag would be better. But for those of you who don't know, Calvin really likes theater.
Yeah.
I know that's hard to believe.
Why is it hard to believe?
But how he has his hair right now,
It's a joke. It's a joke. You
You
know,
wanna fight?
Because Calvin did real well in speech. He's taking the acting class. Is there some reason you're playing with your hair?
You gotta poof it up to do the flat Earth thing because the first line, like,
What does
like,
your hair have to do with
like,
the flat
like,
Earth?
like, who's that guy Giorgio or whatever his name
Is
is?
this like reverse?
Like, you know, it's
okay.
like alien.
Yeah,
you know,
Giorgio.
the aliens guy, Giorgio. So I would get my hair done up like that, or at least I would try to.
I wonder if Giorgio. I mean, is he a flat earther?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if he is.
Well, there's a research project for you.
Okay, well, I'll research it then.
So if a flat earther, do they believe that like the Earth is the center of the universe?
Yeah, they believe in a heliocentric. No. They believe in like not heliocentric. Sorry, what's the term for around the Earth? Geocentric. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they believe in that model. A lot of them like going down the rabbit hole of flat Earth videos is crazy because like you know there's a problem when you can't tell which ones are like satire and which ones are genuine because like it all sounds crazy even if you're watching something that was meant to be a joke and meant to mess with people, it still looks no less convincing than the stuff that's genuine. Like one of my favorite videos with the flat Earth, it's this guy, I don't remember what his name is, but he has this video called Indisputable Proof that the Earth is flat, and it's just like 6 minutes of him rambling with the globe, like putting an airplane in different positions on it, talking about how like we know Antarctica is not upside down, we know Australia is not upside down, because then they'd fall off and stuff. But I'm in the minority when I say this, but I'm pretty sure he's joking.
I was just gonna say that has to be a joke.
But I see people use that argument legitimately.
Okay.
And then there was I think it was on ABC or BBC or something like that. Just one of those 3-letter acronym news sites. It wasn't CNN because I don't remember if it was, but they invited like these scientists invited these 3 flat Earth guys onto the show to like kind of talk, you know, about what their ideas were, and it was just them rambling about like lasers and how like windows in airplanes are like, you know, indented slightly so it looks like the Earth is round.
Did any of them ask for the verifiable scientific proof that every photo from outer space of the globe is faked?
No matter what, they're always gonna be like, "Oh, it's fake. Like you weren't there when it was taken." I wasn't.
But what's the proof of that?
Like the proof that it's false.
Yeah, the proof that I wasn't there is not an argument because I'm
but
not
like
the only
that's
person on the planet.
but that's really only but like the thing that really gets me, the thing that really fascinates me, is that I rarely ever see a flat earther talk about why the government's hiding all this. Like, you ask them for a motivation, and they're just like, they just say something generic about how they're hiding secrets from us. Like, some people say, oh, Antarctica, because they believe Antarctica is like wrapped around the rim of the world, right? Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But they believe that past Antarctica, there's more continents that we're not allowed to go to.
I'm starting to get numb.
Some people believe that after the rim, there's just like an abyss. And they were like, oh, well, gravity doesn't exist. We're not attracted to the Earth. The Earth is just constantly going upwards, so we're, you know, rooted to it.
So why come we don't freeze when the sun goes down?
Okay, they believe... this is crazy. Okay, so they accommodate for the fact that, like, oh, the sun only covers certain areas of the flat Earth because of the way, you know, it rotates around, so the light would only hit here. But they fail to explain the fact that the sun projects light in all directions because it's a star. It's not like a light bulb. It's not like a focused light like these. It projects light everywhere. So if the flat Earth was real and the sun never really went below, because it can't go below, or else the whole day-night cycle thing would, you know, get destroyed, right?
If you don't
So if it's up there is no way for someone to never not see the sun. It would be impossible.
Right.
For them to not see it.
I thought I was gonna like be eating pudding the rest of the day.
It's terrible. It's just awful.
All right,
it's the worst
here,
thing since Jonestown.
There's a question here, Dr. Heiser. Where's your buddy alien? If you mean the alien in the Fringe Pop videos, he is in a storage unit in Dallas. It's the only one I can think of as far as a buddy alien. Okay. I'm caught now in a thought because I was going to say I heard something dumber this last week than
Right.
the flat Earth.
I have something that can
But-
probably top it, but you say yours first.
Okay, but I honestly don't think there really is anything dumber. But I'm kind of wondering.
Okay,
about
because
this.
I got lots.
Okay, please.
Okay, go for it.
Just
Go for it.
rein yourself into.
This is
one.
my only joy.
Okay, someone sent me an email this week.
Yeah.
Alright. Oh, he knows what I don't.
Do you know what I'm going to say here? Okay, so it wasn't you. Okay, someone sent me an email this week to a YouTube video,
All right.
and I didn't watch it because it was so soul crushing. Just to hear, because the person told me what was in it. They said it's a video of someone saying that, hey, we have President Trump and Vice President Pence.
All right.
This must be a fulfillment of end times prophecy because Trump-Pence sounds like trumpets.
Yeah, but that's that's the dumbest thing I've. Well, not
done-
the dumbest thing I've ever
I'm done
heard.
now. Okay, that's. There you
Okay,
go.
clearly because of some word that existed long ago before the modern English language is around that happens to translate to our version of trumpets. By the way, if you're French, no end times. Like you're living forever if you're any other language. Only if you speak English is this prophecy valid now.
Right. Well, we know
It's dumb.
Right. We know Bible is all about the English-speaking world. Okay.
I think that video is probably a troll. But you know what I think is one of the most soul-crushing
Now, look.
things I've ever seen?
Wow.
Okay, so I spend a lot of my time looking for soul-crushing things on YouTube. By
Dumb
far,
stuff I heard this week.
by far,
Smackdown.
one of the worst or one of the most hilarious like flat Earth related things I found was Vice went out and they shot a little documentary about the flat Earth convention, right? And they talked to some people, and let me just tell you,
There's a flat Earth convention.
yeah.
Wait a minute.
All right, go ahead.
So Vice goes in. Picture this: Vice goes in and they're filming, and like within the first 5 minutes of the documentary, you see some guy freestyle rapping about flat Earth. There's like celebrities there. There's some guy dressed up in like a pinstripe suit and like a fedora, and at the end, they all gather in front of a giant sign with the flat Earth. And you know what their chant is? They chant, "We're not crazy." That's something a crazy person would say.
That is the definition of crazy.
Okay, that's.
I mean, there's like serious communities of flat Earth people.
Okay, people are
Yeah, there are.
asking where Mom is asking where Maury is. So.
Maury's off to the side. He's safe
All right. Well, he's awake.
that way.
He's with Armin. So go ahead, give him some screen time.
This is TMZ. What do you think of the flat Earth? That's what I thought. I mean, hey, he didn't confirm or deny it, so we can superimpose whatever meaning we want onto that, right? Argument from silence, something like that.
Okay, so that's where Maury is. Well, we are at 8:42, so we're a little over an hour.
But to be
So-
fair, we were out for 10 minutes, so
Yeah,
I think
we
it's
were out
fair.
for 10 minutes. So, Robert, glad you could join us. Do you have any,
Thank
any
you.
parting wisdom? Any like thing you heard that's dumber than either of these two things? Or
Oh yeah.
You want to?
Let me
Yeah.
let me just zoom in on you for this.
Oh yeah.
Or I was gonna say, or edify us in some way, but no. Go ahead and crush our soul.
Okay. I'm from Arkansas,
Oh, here we
and
go.
that
This isn't
is
the
actually
this
in the
isn't
Bible.
Okay, you win. This is the third time I've had to hear this.
And
since you've
Noah
been here.
looked out the ark and saw Arkansas.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay,
It's in the Bible,
Yeah.
King James version.
right. There you go. It's like who's the shortest man in the Bible? Bildad, the shoe height. Okay, we get all this stuff. Just-
I ought to introduce you to my friend Enoch from theater, because what Enoch specializes in is like he does these incredible puns that you would never see coming. Like he leaves me on like a minute long tangent about like drugs. He's like, oh yeah, and the best drug would be coding because you can take it in class, computer class, and then it clicks in my mind like, oh, coding. I don't like this person anymore, but. Like he's the master of puns, and I gotta say, Arkansas is it's up there.
Go ahead.
It's up there.
Yeah, that's bad. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. You probably regret it at this point, but there we go. So
Hey, wait, Dad. One more soul crushing thing. Do you know who Little Tay is?
Little Tay.
Little Tay.
Is this somebody in the stream or just this is a?
No, someone who's like on Instagram. Do you know who Lil Tay is?
No. Why would I know who
Lil Lil. You don't have to, Lil Tay.
Lil Tay.
Lil Tay. Do you know who Lil Tay is?
I have no
Do you know
idea.
who Danielle Bergoli is?
No.
Do you know who
If these are pop culture references, I don't know any of them.
Lil Tay is this little girl, right? And actually, I'll tell you about it afterwards
his
because
name
this
is
is like a
Tay?
whole other. No, Lil Tay. That's her name. Her name's Lil Tay.
Oh.
First, last, and middle. Lil Tay.
Oh, okay.
That's her name. And Lil Tay has.
So what about her?
She's a 9-year-old, right? Her all of her stuff got shut down, but while she was active on Instagram, she did this thing where she basically built a career out of bragging about how rich she supposedly was to people and acting like she was like some like SoundCloud rapper or something. It's actually really funny. I'll show it to you. But Lil Tay, once we get into it, is the most soul crushing thing I can think of.
So why was her stuff taken down?
I don't know. We don't know yet. It happened very recently.
Is the deep state after her? Or something?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Lil Tay's a hardened criminal. She's 9 years old.
Right, yeah,
She's been working since she was 6.
it
She's
sure-
a Harvard
She's been working
dropout.
since she
Sure
was
sounds
6.
like it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's been working since she's been 6 apparently. And she claims to be a Harvard dropout. It's great.
All right. Yeah. But Dr. Heiser, the Trump prophecies. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Yeah. Because the Bible is all about what's happening in America. We know.
Especially the Book of Revelation.
Right. Nowhere else. It's just
The
what's
America-centric
happening in America.
Earth model.
All right. So thanks everybody for watching. Please, tune in next time, or I don't know. Maybe you should. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. All right. Thanks a lot. We're cutting it.
And remember,
soon.
kids.
Robert, thanks for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This has
Have
been
fun.
the PugCast with Maury, Armin, Rob, me, Dad. Remember, kids, flat-soled shoes only exist because the Earth